So I was thinking, like, what can we do? Because I got really riled up. I'm like, I'm fuck this system. You can see if anyone, whoever the creators are, just look what they're doing and do the same shit. Like, they're telling their kids no.
Tristan was saying, you have to remember, these things were not designed by child psychologists. They were designed by these brilliant tech engineers. Like
all the same, just 28-year-old white dudes.
All the same 28-year-old white dudes that are really good at hacking things and hacking systems, hacking the human brain. They don't care about your 8-year-old that's got an iPhone.
Unless it's their 8-year-old.
Right.
But they're like, we're screwed. And what's interesting here is you have all this data and all these algorithms that are basically optimizing for your interaction with their app. And even the people at the top don't really know what's going on.
Yeah.
Because it's artificial intelligence just improving upon itself at this point. It's just a mess.
Two things in that vein. Oh, I actually like this movie a lot more than I thought. Fake news spreads 6 times faster than normal news on Twitter. 1. Then Jaron Lanier, I thought his name was Jardon. Jardon. Names are tough, and I hate getting them wrong. But Jaron says he did this as something I've never heard before. But he's like, what if when we went to Wikipedia is like the last frontier? Because that is one of the last things that looks the same when everybody arrives on the page. Could you imagine if Wikipedia was running these algorithms to optimize for performance? Everyone would be, disseminating fake news. And that's the world we live in.
And then you look at the Wikipedia model and they're constantly like, please donate.
Yeah.
Please donate.
Yeah.
Please donate.
They don't have enough money.
No one can figure out. That's why it's so important to just figure out the business model, because that's going to affect everything. I think Charlie Munger has this quote, show me the incentive and I'll show you the behavior.
Show me the incentive and I'll show you the behavior.
I love the behavior.
100%.
I love it. Exactly. So the incentive here is just capture attention. Well, the behavior is going to be like creating systems that capture your attention. So
it's also habit from an algorithm's perspective too. It's like, what's the cue? What gets you there? What's the routine that once you're there, you
perfect.
do? Yeah.
It's literally perfect. Like the ding. That's why it's the first thing. Habits. Yeah. What is it? Charles Duhigg. The Power of Habit.
Oh, I don't
the author.
even know.
Yeah. He says cue, then was it action and
routine and reward.
I haven't read it in a little bit. But basically the cue is always going to be that ding. So if you turn off the ding, you turn off the vibrate, except for you can do like contacts only calls. That's all I have it for. Then you're not going to get anything that's on an emergency, basically.
It's so interesting too, because growing up with this stuff and responding to all those dings, and I used to pride myself in being so responsive, so quick. Now that everything's on silent all the time, I get on my phone and I'm like, whoa, so much time has passed. Look at all these things that have stacked up, messages and notification stuff. But it's good because you can separate the flow work, the important stuff, from, okay, now I'll spend 10 minutes on my phone getting through this stuff.
So I was thinking, trying to implement, maybe I don't want to get there. I realize I don't want to get there yet.
Why?
Because you brought up one Wikipedia and like everyone sees the same Wikipedia. The problem is there's recommendations. And recommendations show you what you tend to like. So guess what happens? You see a lot of what you tend to like.
Yeah.
And not a lot of the shit you really need to see.
Yeah.
So that's why I always talk about the blessing of having a family that one side is super Democrat, one's super Republican, or just left and right. So I see everything accidentally just because they're my friends. But it gives me like, oh, okay, I don't know. The right's always, I laugh at their shit. It's a lot funnier to me. So I think I can't avoid that. The left is super like cerebral, like smart, like you should do this. It's very like moral argument. The right's just fucking around.
It's the righteous mind.
But
it's all about morality.
And most people don't have that privilege.
Hey, Haidt was in this movie.
Jonathan I know.
Haidt.
I was psyched. I'm like, he talked about his 3 solutions too. We'll get to that.
Okay.
We covered it in, I don't know what episode it was, but we'll link it in the show notes. I think that is the underlying problem that I didn't really think about before, was the potential damage that this polarization has done. Because it has the graph, maybe we'll try and find some B-roll or something, but the graph of polarization over time. And you can map anything onto the start of social media in like 2010. Yeah. Whether it's the suicide rate for girls and boys just almost doubling, basically for girls, I think it
200%.
was. And same thing here with polarization. Right when it comes up, you see the left and the right just splitting apart this massive
Ezra
divide.
Klein wrote a great book about this called Why We're Polarized. And it's a lot of that stuff.
Hey, you read a lot, huh?
Sometimes. Sometimes.
So that's what I wasn't really thinking of, like this. I don't know. I'm just not in the world as much. Like I don't follow news or anything like that, like we've talked about. So I just don't see on the ground as much polarization other than these clowns honking for the last week straight for 4 hours for Mexican Independence Day.
What does that have to do with polarization? It's just a holiday.
It's just like downtown Chicago is a little chaotic.
Okay.
Like that's my closest because I'm not really paying attention to the issues. I just scroll through it or get off it. But now I realize if people are just getting so worked up about these non-issues that normally we could sit down and talk about, or actually I was reading something where like that used to be the case, but there's also an argument that maybe it's just a scapegoat. Like everyone just like figures out who to kill and they go, I'll go and murder that person. That's like how they release. I don't know. But ideally we can sit down. We don't have schools that talk about debate anymore because we have the safe spaces. That was another one of our episodes. But polarization is the issue. And I guess we get into some solutions. But
the thing too with the algorithms is this was a series at the New York Times called like The Rabbit Hole or something. It's a separate podcast now. I haven't listened to it, but my family talks a lot about it. And what's basically happening is if you spend a lot of time on YouTube, again, that algorithm is honing in its ability to recommend stuff. And each time it recommends something, it becomes, it gets you to watch 5 more seconds, 10 more seconds. And if you're going, let's say you watch some video that's like propaganda-ish or something, like over time, those recommendations will become more and more tailored to you going in that polar direction, be it to the left or to the right. Until you're like just this extremist that's been on YouTube for the last 28 hours and you don't know how you got there.
People don't notice gradual change.
Right.
And it's that always like the frog in the hot water sort of deal. But it's true. Like, especially for anyone born now, they never saw the world before. I can barely remember it. I think anyone 10 years older than us for sure remembers it. But it's even hard for us to imagine, to fathom a world where everyone's not looking at their phones. That's why I love this one image. Maybe we'll find it and put it in the notes too, of them photoshopping out people's phones walking around the city.
Scary.
So I was thinking, like, what can we do? Because I got really riled up. I'm like, I'm fuck this system. You can see if anyone, whoever the creators are, just look what they're doing and do the same shit. Like, they're telling their kids no. We talked about hate, but basically he's like, one, we should outlaw it for anyone under 14, definitely under, like, he'd prefer under 16. But actually, that kind of ties into network effects with Dunbar.
Okay.
But the beauty here is that legislation can have a massive effect if you just wipe it out. Because if your school, no one has it because it's illegal, then it's just not going to catch on. Like maybe a couple fringe kids will like have social media in general.
Okay.
So like if none of the kids at school have Instagram, you're not going to get on Instagram because who the hell are you going to talk to?
Nobody's there. Right.
So that's why legislating there. At home, you can just say like no phones.
It's hard. So I think he was the Facebook monetization guy. He was talking about how like he's cognizant of this stuff. Obviously, he created it, but still, he's like, all right, I'm not going to bring my phone in the bedroom. And then 3 days later, he's like, I could have a little bit of my phone in bed.
Everyone's susceptible.
Yeah.
It's just that's what's interesting. That's why I want to study even more about human psychology. I've done a good amount, but that's the thing that's not changing ever.
Right.
No matter how hard we try, unless Elon Musk with his little what's that?
Hyperloop?
No, it's in his Neuralink. Unless Neuralink comes in, connects us to the computers, I don't even know what that world's going to be like.
I think Kanye just tweeted about that or something. Stay away.
But yeah, so my question now is like, what other than what we've done so far is going to be important? So do not disturb, obviously. We had this thing in college, the phone pile.
The phone pile.
I love that shit. It was kind of like they had that with the little timer box from Shark Tank.
Yeah, right.
But then the girl breaks it. But I love that of like, hey, we're at dinner. Here's the phone pile.
I think what we need to figure out here is hate says it. Like kids getting their licenses are down. Kids having sex, using drugs and alcohol for like kind of the reason kids should be doing those things is down, way down. Like people think kids are rowdier and just like more ambivalent about the world than our parents were. No, we're partying less. I'm going to say it again. We're having less sex and doing less drugs. Part of the solution has to be like getting kids to do that stuff in person.
That's why I sent you that van life video this morning.
Yeah, I got to watch it.
MLB guy who's he had like a $2 million contract, but he's living out of his van, just surfing around and just being a hippie. I'm like, God damn, Belky bought his van. I'm like, I'm kind of into that right now.
Yeah.
I think there's a balance.
There's obviously a balance. I bring this up because something about Dunbar or whatever else it is, there has to be some game aspect that gets these 15-year-olds, 17-year-olds coming back and making sure they're going out of their way to hang out in person.
It's funny because you fall victim to the same thing. Like you want people to come to your app to connect with people, but then it's like, all right, just come for a second and then get off. It's like, it's a very weird little balance you're trying to strike.
Well, yeah, we're like, maybe come to the app, and once you're with your friends, we're blocking your phone or blocking your social media.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
Oh, you want to work now?
No.
So you scan your 2 QR codes at the cashier, and that activates
off.
like parental control, like a gentle nudge.